Hello and welcome to Diabetes Connections in the News. I'm Stacey Simms, and these are the top diabetes stories and headlines of the past 7 days. All sources linked up where you're watching and at diabetes-connections.com when this airs as a podcast. Are you looking to get organized? Check out my new guide with top tips to clear your diabetes clutter, everything from how to start to where to donate and how to keep it from taking over your house. Head over to diabetes-connections.com to organize your diabetes supplies. Some new information about Dexcom's upcoming G7, which has been submitted now to the US FDA and in Europe. Latest clinical studies show the MARD of the G7 is 8.2 for adults compared to 9 for the G6. MARD is the mean absolute relative difference. The lower the better here. G7 was even lower, 8.1 for kids. This is close to the same results they talked about last summer in a different study, but the group in this trial was bigger. G7 is expected to get approval in Europe as early as this quarter and likely in the US much later this year. Our longer format interview episode this week is with Dexcom CEO, and we go in depth on this and a lot more. There are 2 COVID and diabetes studies I want to talk about. The first showing that more children are being diagnosed with type 1 and type 2 diabetes after getting COVID. This study looked at databases of people under 18 starting in March 2020 and then going forward for 18 months. There are a lot of questions here, including whether post-COVID type 2 diabetes will actually be a temporary condition or a chronic one, which leads us to the other study. This one in adults. In almost 4,000 COVID patients, just under half developed high blood sugar levels, including many who were not previously diabetic. These researchers say a lot of the patients here were in their 30s and 40s, no sign of diabetes before COVID, and the levels of glucose in their blood were incredibly high, sometimes more than twice the level that indicates diabetes. And these patients still had high levels of C-peptide, which shows that they were still producing insulin. One of the theories here is that something is disrupting the fat cells, but the researchers admit they are just at the beginning of figuring this out. It's this latter study and others like it that seem to be showing there really is something different about COVID and blood glucose. A little bit of editorial here, but I saw a lot of people dismissing the children's study, saying things like, well, any virus can cause T1D. I am glad that these researchers are digging into what is going on. Abbott unveils plans for a new line of consumer bio-wearable sensors that will collect a broader range of biological readings to help users optimize their exercise and nutrition regimens and overall health. It's called Lingo, and it's all still under development. These are not intended for medical use. They are based on the existing Freestyle Libre diabetes monitoring technology that most of us are very familiar with. But we're talking about measuring glucose and also ketones, lactate, and alcohol levels. Interesting to me and telling. These were shown at the Consumer Electronics Show, not at a medical conference, but Abbott is upfront that these are basically, for athletes, not for people with diabetes or who need to make medical decisions based on the sensors. By the way, my understanding, and I've seen this written in a different way here and there, is that each type of sensor would be different. In other words, you're not measuring lactate and ketones and glucose all on one sensors. These would be different designated actual devices, each doing one of those things, and we will see which of them makes it off the drawing board. Another divestment for Lilly Diabetes. Last week, we told you they were doing away with their Journey medals for Diversaries. They have since announced that T1D Everyday Magic is no more. This was a partnership between Lilly and Disney. It was a blog. It was a place for recipes. It was also the home of those Coco books, the cute monkey with diabetes who hangs out with Mickey and Minnie Mouse. As of now, you can still get digital versions of the books via the website, but we'll see how long that lasts. Full disclosure, I wrote for them a couple of times. I was paid by them too. I am glad I saved those columns because I don't know where they are now. Interesting news from an amazing athlete with type 1. We told you that Sebastian Sasseville biked across Canada this summer. He previously went up Mount Everest and he did a brutal race across the Sahara. Now, all the data on his blood sugar during that recent ride has been published. It's in the Journal of Diabetes, Obesity, and Metabolism. Sasseville wore the Tandem and Dexcom Control IQ system during the ride. And the article is about how using that kind of automated insulin delivery system can help ultra athletes with diabetes. This week marks 100 years since the first person received a shot of insulin. Canadian teenager Leonard Thompson got that life-saving injection on January 11th, 1922. Of course, this was via Dr. Frederick Banting and his team. Thompson was drifting in and out of a diabetic coma, and he weighed only 65 pounds. He was 14 years old. The first shot was found to be impure. It didn't work. He had a bad reaction, but they were able to fix the problem and give him a second, purer shot. Thompson only lived to age 27, but his actions helped save so many lives. Before I let you go, as I mentioned earlier, the podcast this week is an update from Dexcom. CEO Kevin Sayer answers your questions about the G7 and lots more. Listen wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're listening to this on a podcast app, just go back one episode. And that is in the news for this week. If you like it, please share it. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you back here soon.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Simms Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.